Hi, I'm Dr. Debra Mandel, licensed psychologist and author. Welcome to this session on 10 tips to thrive through stress. Life has many curveballs and lots of things that people perceive as stressful. These are many kinds of life events, such as the loss of a job, the change of a job, buying a house, selling a house, having a child, having your child go off to college, enduring a breakup, or many other things that people can consider to be stressful events. In fact, there are scales that you can look at on the internet that tell you about the 10 top most stressful life events and the scores that are attached to those. But in my experience, even though something might be considered a stressor, whether or not we experience it as stressful is very dependent on our relationship to that event. In other words, what is our perception, our projections, our attitudes, and emotions about the event? All those things combined are going to determine whether we experience the event as stressful or as maybe just a mild irritation or a nuisance or a challenge that we have to face. So let me detour for a moment and talk about what is stress and how do we experience stress in the body. A stressful situation is anything that causes us to experience something akin to a fight or flight reaction. There's an event that occurs and we respond to it as if we need to fight, flee, or even freeze. Something that calls us into one of those three actions. And even though freezing doesn't seem like an action, it is the body's response to something at times when we don't feel like we can move anywhere else. When our body is in a state of stress, our sympathetic nervous system gets activated. That's where everything gets revved up. Our heart starts racing. There is more blood that goes to certain places in the body to enable us to survive, right? That's what we need to do in a stressful event. We want to survive. We don't want to be a victim to it, so we want to get through it. But people get stuck in this idea of just surviving a stressful event, and I want to take us into the realm of thriving. Stress shows up in the body in many different ways. Sometimes it can be in the form of a mild headache, sweaty palms, a racing heart, elevated blood pressure, headaches, or other types of somatic experiences. Maybe even tingling in the fingers or in the toes, a general sense of unease and discomfort. Sometimes people can even experience that they're having something like a heart attack and get very frightened, which is then compounded by anxiety and things that we do to increase the stress, like projecting into the future and creating catastrophic thinking in our minds. In the short term, if we experience stress, as I was saying, the sympathetic nervous system revs up. And when the saber-toothed tiger is out of our sight and we know that we are now safe, then the body's parasympathetic nervous system response kicks in and helps us to calm down. Things go back to homeostasis or equilibrium. And that's what we want in a stress response, is the cortisol is released, the adrenaline, all the things that we need to survive revs up, and then when we are past the stress, it calms down. The problem is, for so many of us, stress comes in the form of elongated experiences, right? If you're buying a house or selling a house, that doesn't usually happen in a split second. That's a long process, and there are many things that go into that. But just like I said earlier, it is our relationship to that event that will either keep us in a prolonged state of stress, or we can learn how to thrive through it. One of the things that I'm really big on is helping people move into a thriving mentality. That's very different than a victim mentality or a survivor mentality. In a victim mentality, you are in a maximum security prison. You feel as if you have no choices and that life is happening to you. Now, survivor mentality is a step better, but it's still like being in a minimum security prison. You don't see all the options available. The glass is still half empty. You don't even see where you can fill up the cup. But thriving, on the other hand, is a whole new world. It's where we see crystal clear all the different choices that we have available to us, even when some of those choices are not ideal. But we recognize them and we know that we can take action, and we feel confident in our ability to move through difficult and challenging life events. So when you experience stress, there are many things that you can do to help you thrive through it. So no longer settle for being a victim to something or surviving, but actually learning to thrive. Okay, so here are my 10 tips on how to thrive through stress. One of the most useful tools that I like is what I call the REACT tool, REACT. R stands for, what's the reality in front of you? E stands for, is it an emergency? A, depending on what you determine whether it's an emergency or not, what actions do you need to take? C, what are the consequences? And T, what do you think about them? So applying the REACT tool to a stressful situation or something you perceive as stressful, it's a very good tool in helping to put a pause button and calm down for a moment to see what's really in front of you. And trust me, if you're really in an emergency situation, you won't even think about doing anything other than fight, flight, or freeze, and your body will just react. But if it's not a life-threatening situation, but you're having a reaction as if it is, practice the REACT tool. 2, live in the here and now. And I truly mean that, and I know how hard that is for most of us. We have so many things on our mind. We worry about the past. We worry about the future. But you know, about 80 to 90% of the things that we worry about never actually come true. And those that do are usually 80 to 90% less horrific than we projected to begin with. So being able to bring yourself into the present moment is where you're going to be the most grounded and the most capable of dealing with whatever is in front of you. If you're worrying too much about the future and doing catastrophic thinking, you're going to have no energy left to handle what's truly in front of you, even if it is a big event in life. But a lot of times things are just very, very minor and we react to them as if they're very huge. For instance, getting a flat tire on the way to work. Okay, it's an inconvenience and it's a nuisance, but I'm sure you've seen some people standing by their car waiting for AAA or figuring out where their jack is and doing their tire themselves, and they have a sense of peace about them because they're probably just saying, all right, this is what is. This is what is right now in this moment, and this is what I have to handle. I don't need to worry about losing my job because I'm going to be a few minutes late. I don't need to worry about what's going to happen later on down the line. But what do I need to worry about right now? Nothing, actually. I just need to deal with what's right in front of me. That's why it's crucial to, as much as possible, try to be in the here and now. Number 3, handle only that which you can handle, and then accept what's outside of your control. So often we try to control things we have no control over, like other people's reactions or thoughts or feelings. What we do have control over is our own behavior and how we respond to a given situation. So let's take that flat tire again. If you sit in your car and you fret about it and you worry and you don't take any action, that tire's not going to get fixed. It will not fix itself. But if you sit around and you beat yourself up because you knew that you should have taken your car to the shop to get your tires checked and you didn't, then you're just living in regret, and that's not going to help you be able to handle what's right in front of you. So handle only that which you can handle and let go of the rest. Number 4, be mindful of the consequences of your choices. Sometimes we make choices very impulsively and we don't think through the consequences, and that can add to our stress. So over time, if we repeatedly act impulsively, we're going to actually cause more stress in our lives. So it's important to be thoughtful about the consequences and be willing to accept what those consequences are. Sometimes we need to make a choice that has consequences we don't necessarily like, but they're necessary because of something else that we want. Number 5, this one I call turning chicken shit into chicken salad. And I'm sorry if that offends you, and it's quite the image, but it truly is another way of saying find the silver lining in something, right? Use a stressful situation as an opportunity for growth, an opportunity to learn something new, even if that's learning more about some of your own limitations and having to accept those. But it's okay, because almost every life event that we have can turn into a learning experience if we allow it to. Number 6, keep things simple during stressful times. one of the things that human beings are notorious for is compounding a problem, right? We pile on, pile on, pile on, pile on. The next thing you know, we've got 47 things on our plate when all that we really need to handle is what's right in front of us. So if you're doing that, if your tendency is to just keep piling on by worrying about things, by jumping into the future or regretting the past, it's going to make whatever you're going through much more stressful. So it's very important to try to be, again, in the moment and keep things simple. That might come about from just making a list of maybe the 5 most important things to take care of in the immediate moment to handle this stressful experience. For instance, let's say you are interviewing for a new job and you're nervous about it. Well, you can sit around and worry about it and project all the things that may or may not happen, that you may get the job, you may not get the job, what happens if you get it, what happens if you don't get it, etc., etc. Will there be another job? Will I be homeless? All these things just compound the problem. Instead, just keep it simple. What can you handle at that moment is do whatever research you need to do to understand the job responsibilities better. Be prepared. That's what you can handle. That would be keeping it simple. Number 7, search for the positives in any life situation, because sometimes we just focus on the negatives and that adds to more stress. If you focus on the positives, you will find yourself moving through the stress in a much healthier and easier way. And if you're having trouble finding the positives, ask somebody. Ask somebody else's perspective. Ask a friend who usually sees the light at the end of the tunnel. And I'm not suggesting that you practice denial. If something is truly in front of you that's very painful and very stressful, like the loss of a loved one or not knowing if you have to go bankrupt or not, these are stressful experiences, but you can see something positive in maybe there's a learning situation here. Maybe you will learn how to better deal with your finances should there be a bankruptcy. Maybe you will learn to appreciate those who are around you, who you love, in a more generous and loving way once you're losing someone. So these are all ways that we can turn a sad or painful or stressful situation into something that has some positives to it. Number 8, remind yourself of your choices. Sometimes when we're in a stressful situation, we drop into that victim mentality. This is happening to me. I don't know how I'm ever going to get through this. Where there is a will, there is a way. And most of the time, we can get through almost any situation that doesn't kill us. So take inventory on what all of your choices are. And number 9, accept that sometimes all of your options stink. You may not have any good options that are in front of you. So you pick the best of the worst, or the least of the worst. Sometimes you'll be faced with situations where all options stink. And it's okay. That happens sometimes. But there's still options, and being grateful that you even have any options is very important. And finally, number 10, sometimes the stress just gets the best of us, and we don't handle it very well, and we don't know how, and we do feel like maybe we are dropping into a victim mentality. So to still become a thriver, that means ask for help. Use the resources that are available to you, friends, family, maybe others who have been through this type of situation that you're experiencing. Maybe look on the internet for some chat rooms that have people discussing these kinds of situations. And if all else fails and you just need extra help, there's no shame in seeking assistance from a psychotherapist, someone like myself, or other types of counselors. It's okay to do that because sometimes we just need a little help. So remember, life throws us many curveballs, some more stressful than others. But if you stick to the moment, if you stay as calm as can be, if you trust in your own self and your own resources and the resources of others to help guide you through it and maintain a positive attitude, you can change stressful events into those that are just learning experiences and new challenges. Thank you for joining me. Bye-bye.